Start a conversation. It's easier than you know. Start a conversation. Nobody should feel alone.
Hello and welcome to Super Connected Conversations, where we explore what it means to be human in an age of algorithms. Full disclosure, today's guest is family. Quite literally, Rose Pepper is the daughter of my other half, the luminous Kate Alderton, actress, theatre director, and my co-pilot on Super Connected. Since the first lockdown, we found ourselves flung together like so many modern families, blended, bruised and beautifully bonded. I've had the extraordinary privilege of co-parenting Rose along with Kate and her wonderful dad, the poet, Dave Pepper. I must say, Rose is an exceptionally bright and talented young lady and has a curiosity about the world that puts the rest of us to shame. And that's why I wanted to ask her what it's like growing up in a world saturated with screens, and at 16, what it's like to turn one of those screens off. Rose was curious after seeing me switch from a smartphone to a light phone, so she decided to try using a light phone herself and live without her smartphone and social media for a month. So let's lean in and listen to a digital native navigating the real world. This is Rose Pepper on Super Connected Conversations. Hello, Rose. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Listen, thank you for doing this. I think there's been some students in the UK that have tried a light phone, but not many. So you're definitely in a tiny little demographic of young people that have tried these phones. It's been 4 weeks or even a bit longer. Has it been a bit longer than 4 weeks since you've started using the light phone?
Yeah, I think maybe a week over, maybe 5 weeks.
Yeah, 5 weeks. So I've got some like special questions to ask, but in just general, what's this been like having had a smartphone for a couple of years and then suddenly trying a light phone?
I definitely thought it would be a much bigger impact on my life than it was. Once I had it, I sort of found sort of moments in my life where I would be using a phone typically. Oh, I don't actually need it. It was an unnecessary add-on to my life that was just not a big miss when I didn't have it anymore.
Like
Um,
what? Can you think of an example?
Well, social media, not having constant access to it, or music, or like being able to Google things in the moment, I thought I'd be deeply affected. I thought I'd be sort of stressed that I couldn't do those things now,
Mm.
or when I'm out and about, or when I'm with my friends. But it really wasn't as different as I thought it would be. It was sort of regular day-to-day life. Occasionally
Yes.
I noticed it, but mostly it was sort of, it just felt regular.
Mm. And in terms of social media, was that something because you're 16 now? When
Mm.
let's think back. When did you use social media for the first time?
I I think I got Instagram for the first time on my 12th birthday in year seven, I think. Like the first day of term was my birthday in year seven.
Hmm.
Um, but I feel like I might have waited a bit longer because of COVID. It pushed that forward and I felt like there was a need to constantly be online and be like, oh, now I really do need to do that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think I was at 12 when I first got things like that, and then maybe a bit later for TikTok and Snapchat.
It's really amazing to hear you say at your age that what it tells me is that you are aware within 4 years of using social media that being in a situation that we were all in with COVID may have contributed to you thinking you had to be online.
Mm.
I mean,
Well,
sorry, go on.
I just I know during COVID, because of lack of communication, it felt like well the only way for anyone my generation to be in touch
Mm,
um was through social media. But I think I was probably just trying to convince my parents to let me have Instagram, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, but the same things, Messenger would have been exactly the same and in communication with my friends
Mm.
than any other social media platform. But I think it was sort of an excuse for a lot of kids and parents for letting them get phones at such a young age. Because yeah, my parents didn't let my brother get a phone until much later, until like 13, 14.
Yeah. So
But
COVID,
because of
COVID changed things in that way, didn't
it
it?
was a bit of a get out that hasn't really been reversed, I don't think. I think those same principles that parents took have sort of been carried out and never really like removed once COVID was over.
Wow, that's really profound. So the idea that it was normal when obviously we were all stuck at home and not being able to, it's normal to give your child something that made them feel more connected and entertained as well, of course. And you sort of feel that now that's not the case. We're not in at home anymore, but we're still living our lives a little bit underneath that norm.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of adults working in this space that would agree with you. Um, let's talk about you. I mean, you come from a particularly interesting and original background. You know, your mother is an actress and working in communications. Your father is a poet and performer and musician. Your grandparents are actors. You know, you've grown up with creativity and the wonder of boredom. You know, the idea that being bored is actually an opportunity to be creative for any of us that have grown up in, you know, lucky to be growing up in a creative family. What do you feel that that has equipped you a bit better for dealing with the sort of, I don't know, the way that technology entices us into sort of playing with it and doing things with it instead of doing stuff with our own imaginations? Do you think that's helped?
I think it definitely has because I know personally I've been exposed to so much, like such a wide range of creative practices and sort of, plays, music, lots of different things that maybe some parents might think, oh, my kid's too young for that. Not that it's
Mm,
inappropriate, but it's just, it would bore them. But because it was very normal in my family growing up to not be treated as if I was, a really little kid who wouldn't find any of these things interesting.
hmm
I've sort of been like sort of grown up with the idea that you watch things and you analyze them and you pick them apart and you ask questions and you learn about it and you gain understanding. You don't have to know the things to begin with, but you can really just talk about it. And my parents would always ask me, what was the theme of whatever you just watched or listened to or read?
So
What's
the
it
things
about?
you're talking about might be like books or theatre or performances or
Yeah.
films.
Yeah, because we just
Mm,
talked about it. And that's, I think at least in some of my friends' households, it's just not normal to be that like inquisitive to
mm,
creative media. And that's really meant that when I grew up and on social media, it's kind of equipped me with the ability to criticize, like if I saw fake news things or posting, I think I've been armed with the ability to be able to go like, no, that's obviously like a tactic that people use, and it's not obvious to a lot of people. But
mm,
because of the creativity I've been sort of analyzing since I was really little,
mm,
I've been a lot better defended against tactics used by social media companies or
mm,
I don't know, media, that I think a lot of people still struggle with sort of breaking down, even though they've grown up with the social media, but without the sort of analytical part that comes with creativity. I'm not quite sure, but
No, I
yeah.
know, I understand what you mean. Yeah, I think just being taught to be a bit critical, not critical in a unpleasant way, but critical in terms of just not taking everything at face value straight away and
Yeah.
trying to understand where it's coming from and what the intention behind it is. I mean, I've heard you, I've heard you say critical things about real world stuff as well as stuff on the internet, and it's really impressive, especially the stuff that you're coming up against, like everyone else your age, through social media. I
Mm.
wonder what's that like in terms of understanding, the world and in the way the world is, now that you've gone without it for a month, in a way. I mean, I know that you're still using like computers at home, but you having a light phone for a month obviously completely stops or halts all the news that comes through the feeds on different social media platforms, isn't it? What did that make you feel like? Did you miss it, or were you like, oh, thank God that's all gone for a bit?
It definitely meant that I was conscious of the fact that, oh, I really do get a lot of my news from social media platforms that obviously are filtered to like my algorithm or whatever. So like catered towards me.
Hmm.
So I found, oh, I need to take sort of action to read a newspaper, which I have tried to do in the past.
You mean a physical
Um,
one?
a physical one or an online
That,
one,
that,
or
yeah.
sort of specific action to be updated rather than just having it constantly taken in sort of unwillingly, um, which I thought was interesting. But it was just very peaceful to not be constantly aware of the latest trends or the latest whatever. But being in a family that talks about sort of world matters or things going on, I didn't feel like I was completely removed. I just felt like, I could take a deep breath and just slow
Hmm.
down for a bit. And which I think would be really useful for kids sort of who were my age when I got the phone, sort of 11, 12, 13, who don't need to be witness to that all the time
Hmm.
and probably should be just taking a breath. Because I know when I was that age, I was also getting similar content that I got now, which perhaps I shouldn't. Maybe it was topical in the world and it made
Hmm.
me informed, but I didn't need to be processing that information in that way on Instagram or on TikTok or whatever it was.
Hmm.
It's a very jarring way of being updated with the world. It's yeah.
And that's a really great example of why it's good to part with a smartphone when you're under 16, I suppose, for a certain amount of time. What can you think of something that was kind of difficult, or that you thought, oh, this isn't good, I've got to go without that for 4 weeks? Anything that you were constantly aware of that you were no longer able to access?
Um, there were a few things that were minor, nothing that was like constantly like bugging me. But
Hmm.
one thing is what I tend to do if I watch a film, I like to go online and I like to look up the film and I want to know what everyone's thinking about it and I want to read reviews, or just watch people talking about it.
Yeah, I
Um,
know you
sort
do.
of engrossed. I like to know everything
I
about it.
know, I know. I
Um,
think I would have done at your age if I could have done. Yeah. Mm.
um, but I found that because I wasn't constantly sort of seeking other people's opinions of what I was looking at. Um,
Mm. So, like
it
other
was
people's
interesting.
comments and
Yeah,
the
so it was interesting because
opinions.
I missed it a lot. But it did mean that I came up with p opinions without any other input. So it was quite a balanced positive and negative.
Mm.
Um, because while I wanted to go and look up what other people were thinking, it meant that I could just sit with a film or with a book just for a while. And I could look it up on YouTube afterwards.
Mm.
But it meant that in like the 10 minutes afterwards or half an hour afterwards, I was sort of just processing it on my own, which
Yeah.
it was an interesting experience because there hasn't been a time recently where I've done that because I've always had my phone with me.
Hmm.
Um, but I found it was interesting.
There are people working in, I suppose, you know, the philosophical and psychological sectors who would say that what you just described is an opportunity to meet with yourself a bit more, so that
Hmm.
you're actually, you're processing things at a way that you are in control of, and you're getting
Mm.
to know how you actually like to process things and what feels
Yeah.
natural to you. You've gone back to your smartphone now,
Yeah, I have. I think last
and
week.
yeah, and are you using the light phone as well? Are you, or is it just, have you gone straight back to smartphone and not light phone?
I've gone back to my regular phone
Yeah.
most of the time. I think I have. I've been sort of leaving my regular phone and not having it because before it felt like I'd be stressed if I didn't have it with me. It was just something that was always on me, and if it wasn't, that felt weird. But I've gotten used to the idea of not having a phone on me, so it's become a lot easier. And I think the light phone, I think it's brilliant as a sort of detox.
Hmm.
Um, but it's much harder to maintain when you have a regular phone because
Yeah, and you can be honest about this. It's
yeah.
fine because there's no wrong or right answer. But if we were to ask you to do another month now, you'd probably be like, no, I don't want to do that now.
I think I would.
Oh, really? Okay.
I would.
You
I
like it?
I liked it. I would. I'm not sure if I'd do it permanently because idea of like just completely never going on my phone
Mm.
again is like weird. But I like the idea of doing like a month off, a month
Mm.
on a light phone, and then like a few weeks on a regular phone to get
Yeah.
caught up on things. Because sort
And
of one no, kept me going sounds a bit drastic. But one of the
sure.
reasons it kept me going while I was on the light phone was, oh, it's only a month, so I'll check whatever I need to check when I get back on it.
Yeah.
Um, which means it's probably right now it wouldn't be a permanent solution for me, but it's certainly a an interesting, yeah, like a
It, it,
detox just
it,
to try for a bit
is it fair
every
to
now and
say
then.
that using the light phone has sort of given you a just a wider perspective of your relationship in general to mobile technology?
I definitely say so. I was aware of how much I was using my phone before, like to a certain extent, and I was trying to not use it as much. But afterwards, when I went back on my phone, it felt so alien, even though it was only a month.
Hmm.
Um, I didn't really notice sort of how much there really is in a phone. Even
Yeah.
if I only use a few things, it's so much information crammed onto like a tiny little thing that can fit in your pocket.
Hmm.
It didn't strike me how bizarre that was until after I got rid of it for a month.
Yeah. So there's a great benefit, I think, isn't there? I had the same thing. I mean, I I went back and forwards between light phone and smartphone eventually, but before that, other what are classed as dumb phones or feature phones. And it isn't, people think about there's two choices, a feature phone, that doesn't have internet, or a smartphone. And it's a bit unfair, really, because the smartphone isn't one thing. It's
Yeah.
so many things. And it took me 9 months to finally, to do an inventory. And I kept writing down. I think I told you, I kept writing down anything that I suddenly realized, oh no, I can't do this because I haven't got my smartphone. I get the smartphone out of the cupboard and look at what was on it and write down, and until I had a list that I had to sort of teach myself how to do. And so, that's me like working on it for 9 months before I'm just on a light phone now. But for you to have picked up this much in a month, and be this aware, it's amazing. It's really well done. Yeah, very impressive. Um, I want to ask about just the physical part of it in terms of looking. And I've spoken to you about this before. Human eyeballs were not designed to have a light flashing in them all the time. And of course, there's a lot of evidence about myopia getting worse, especially in the next 20 years, I think. Um, and a lot of it is to do with smartphone use with, when you're very young. I just wondered what it felt like. And did you have an experience in terms of getting used to e-ink and after using a smartphone for a couple of years, and then going back to the smartphone after using the e-ink? What can you say about that?
Um, I found that e-ink, it's so much less enticing to use, really, which is part of the purpose. But it's like it doesn't make you want to stay on it, and it's because it's sort of an iPhone's using all of the tricks in the book with sort of bright colors and patterns, and it's nice and shiny to try and get you to carry on using it. But e-ink is so much gentler on the eyes. It's so much like there's just a quality in it that is really hard to name.
Mm.
Um, that makes it just really it's a lot nice. It's kind of annoying in some ways, I found, but it was definitely
In what way is it
yeah,
annoying?
the screen, the loading of the screen and the
Yeah, the
it was
refresh rates, it's called. It
yeah,
refreshes, doesn't
that
it?
stuff.
So it
Yeah.
disappears and comes back.
I found that frustrating, but I got used to it eventually.
Mm.
It wasn't a problem for long. Um, but I liked it. I thought it was nice, and I thought the fact that you could have a black background with white text, much nicer. If I could have that in everything I was reading,
Mm.
I'd much prefer that because I'm dyslexic and I find black on white is like so hard to read. It just everything goes together. Um, but white on black, I think, is much nicer to
Mm.
process for me at least.
Yeah, I want to ask you about dyslexia, obviously. I think that would be really helpful to share with others. But just going back to something that you said, which I find myself, it doesn't e-ink screens, and I have a tablet that's e-ink now, and they don't draw you towards it at all.
Mm,
You're not sort of, I don't know, going around doing whatever you're doing on the day and think I'm gonna go and do something fun on an e-ink device. That
yeah.
it just doesn't it doesn't have any addictive quality to it at all, I find. It could be a really good thing for a detox because
Mm,
it doesn't it keeps you connected. You can make phone calls and text, but it keeps you connected to people. It doesn't keep you connected to stimulation and and
yeah.
entertainment or anything. It's interesting, isn't it? And so it's almost like some of the things you've said have made me think that you've revealed that a lot of our uh, addiction or dependency on smartphones is actually to do with how well we can control our need
Mm,
to want to be stimulated all the time, isn't it?
yeah. I know people who, well, it's a common thing that, if your app isn't loading within the first like 3 seconds, it's just worthless. You don't need it. If it takes more than like a tiny amount of patience
Mm,
to load anything on a phone, most people kind of just give up and move on to the next thing.
mm.
Um, because we're so used to having everything sort of immediately available to us, which is
Yeah.
what makes it addictive. Um, so not having access to that definitely, yeah,
So,
interesting.
what do you think about the idea of as a child that's never used a smartphone or any kind of device that will, deliver the service, whatever the service is, quickly? To use a device that can make you be able to speak to your mum or your dad when they're not there and text,
Mm.
but that doesn't have any of that, anything else on it. Do you think it might be less unattractive? because there's no previous experience of all this fast racing, loading of images or, um, you know,
I think so.
yeah, I mean,
I
I'm
found
kind of hoping so. I'm kind of thinking that might be a really nice entry point because phones are important and they've always been important. But the the idea at the moment of trying to ask anybody that's used a smartphone to go backwards is, pretty challenging.
mm, I found when I was on the light phone, I had no like, well, at least a lot less impulse to want to go on my smartphone. But then when I bought back the iPhone, um, even if I only wanted Spotify and I was using an iPod before, or I was listening to music on a record player before, um, it was a lot easier to not want to go on that phone when I didn't have it immediately there. So if I like, even if it was completely off in my bag or off somewhere, um, it just wasn't like it wasn't something I wanted to do, go on my iPhone. But as soon as I turned it on, and it is immediately available, not off, it becomes a lot more, yeah, enticing to want to do, to want
Mm,
to use, or like if I go to change a song on Spotify, it sort of sucks you in a way that the light phone, or just not using a phone, sort of it doesn't, just completely getting rid of it,
mm,
um, means that there's no, yeah, I didn't feel like it was hard to not use it when it like when I was intentionally not using it at all. But it's
mm.
harder to moderate it is than not use it at all, is what I personally found.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And very cool, to be able to hear about it through your lens, because you're the future. You're the generation that we have to hope for all kinds of challenges we're having in our world at the moment. So yeah, it's really great hearing you talk about it. Um, you mentioned you were dyslexic, which I know. What's that like in terms of mobile phone use, technology in general, actually, and even with your laptop? Is it an area that you feel is being exacerbated by technology, or I know very little about it, but obviously you experience it. So yeah, can you talk about that a bit?
Mm, Well, one thing I find is specifically reading on a laptop, I find so difficult. It's a completely different way of processing than reading on paper.
Mm,
Um, I'm not, I don't, I lit I couldn't label what it was, what the difference was. Um, but my dyslexia or whatever it is, just means that I can't read as much on a laptop. I can't process information as much.
mm,
Which is especially difficult because at least at my school, I think most schools in GCSE, I'm allowed to use a laptop, because I get special requirements for having dyslexia.
mm,
Um, but I have to use a laptop specifically, and that's extra time and a laptop and yellow paper, things like that are the only things that I get as someone who's dyslexic to
mm,
help me. But I find it much more difficult to use a laptop. And I know other people who also find that. So I think it's a system that isn't being used to the best because if I
mm.
can't read what I've written back, or yeah, read what I've written on a laptop, um, then it means that it basically doesn't make a difference if I
Yes.
use it or if I don't. It just means I don't use a laptop in exams, even though I can, other than if my hand's hurting because I'm writing a lot, I might use a laptop.
Mm.
Um, but I don't find that it helps at all. I find that it's much, much more difficult. Um,
And
and the
I,
formatting, all of it is just, it doesn't work for me.
yeah, it's interesting hearing you talk about it because I've known, since you were 11 or almost 12, uh, as somebody reading more books than I've seen anybody of any age read. So reading actual books is a huge part of your life, isn't it?
Mhm. Yeah. And
And
I don't struggle with that.
no, not at all. And when you were talking about struggling to read on laptops or screens, I was just thinking about you reading other people's work, but of course, it's reading your own work as well. That's
Yeah.
difficult. Is that right? Wow.
Because it's supposed to be that my spelling supposedly will get better if I use a laptop. But if I can't read back my own work on a laptop,
Mm,
that doesn't matter because I can't read to see if I've made a mistake. So
mm,
by using a laptop, personally, I would probably lose more marks
mm.
because I can't spot those mistakes as easily.
I don't want to be too controversial, but do you feel at all when you are in an educational space that the amount of laptops or tablets or whatever it is that you're using feel like they've just sort of been beamed into your school and not really had much thought as to what effect that's having, what impact, and how helpful or hindering it might be.
Well, I'm really lucky because the school I moved to last year uses books for most lessons. We have Chromebooks that the school gives us, which we can use and we do use in some lessons, some for homework, things like that.
Mm,
Um, but most of our work is written, and I I find it so much easier and
mm,
such a better setting for work. Because at the
mm,
school I was at before that, everybody had laptops, absolutely everybody, and it sort of seemed like a dystopia for me because I'd be sitting at the back of the classroom and it might be physics or something, um, and the teacher would be talking about whatever it is, and there'd be 3 rows ahead of me, each of a student playing games or shopping or anything. And it just became really normalized that the teachers like couldn't stop it at all. And that
mm,
was a few years after COVID. It wasn't immediately afterwards, but it was so normal that people would just not would just have their laptops open and would be doing whatever they wanted, and the teachers couldn't prohibit them from doing it.
mm,
I think because there were a lot of dyslexic students, maybe well, some of them might have found it helpful, but it just meant that there was so much room for distraction that
mm.
wasn't the case, or isn't the case in my current school because you have a book. Some people doodle, but I'd say at least that's creative to a certain extent.
And did the light phone have a sort of, effect that made you notice stuff about your dyslexia?
Well, I noticed I could definitely read better on the light phone, and it made me notice how difficult I found it reading on my phone, um, or on a laptop. Because
When
the
you,
e-ink is a
yeah.
lot easier on the eyes. So yeah.
So it's easier because it's easier on the eyes, as in it's gentler. But in terms of processing, is that what you meant when you said you found it easier to read?
Sort of. Obviously there aren't big text on the light phone, and I wasn't using the notes that much, but just c compared to sort of anything that I would be reading on my regular phone,
Mm.
I could definitely process it because it's at a different rate. I was thinking slower.
Yeah.
So it's sort of the time because the light phone, no, the regular phone is so immediate that often I've typed things and gone, no, wait, I don't mean that at all. I don't know why I just typed that because my brain's sort of on automatic. And I think that feeds into my dyslexia, which means it doesn't make any sense what I'm writing and it's probably spelt wrong. So whatever I type just sort of doesn't make much sense.
Mm. Oh,
Or
thanks for sharing that as well, because I think, I don't know if we do share this with anyone, but if we do, I think it was really helpful um, for people your age that are dyslexic, because I'm sure that a lot of dyslexic. I mean, you're lucky because you have a great relationship with your parents and you talk about everything like this. But I don't think that's the same for all kids. I think hearing
yeah,
about it from someone your age is really cool. Um,
maybe.
um, I also just wanted to ask you about like you're 16 and you've had a light phone for a month with your friends who are not on light phones. Was there a sense, did you get a sense that there was a possibility in the future that like a whole class might do it or something like of your age group?
I think so. I was talking to sort of group of four or five of my friends, and I know most of them were definitely interested in trying
Mm,
out a light phone
mm,
or just seeing what it was because it was really interesting to a lot of them. They found it sort of fascinating what this was because some of them had never considered the possibility of not having a phone
mm,
because a lot of them went to very different schools than I go to now,
mm,
where kids have a very different relationship to technology. Because my school, like sort of a not maybe not large, but like a moderate amount of people um my age might have had a thought about not wanting to go on your phone or that they were going on their phone too much. But at schools my friends have been to, it's a very different experience where I know people who've gotten bullied for not posting a TikTok every single day or made fun of, which I didn't know until recently because I've never been to a school like that. But that I know is not an isolated experience. That's a thing that's happening all over the country, maybe all over the world. Um, but
wow.
yeah, it's quite contrasting. But I know at my school, a lot of people, yeah, certainly found it interesting.
Gosh, it's amazing hearing that. And you're talking about children, young kids bullying
Mm,
other kids for not posting enough. Is that what you mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
It was a culture at my friend's school. You know, you'd post TikToks, like sort of lip sync TikToks from age 12, 11. And if you weren't posting enough, it was really weird. It was like, yeah, you'd be made fun of basically. You'd be picked on for not having a big enough social media presence. And I know that stuck with her, um, to a certain extent, because that culture was so different from the culture of the school I'm in now.
Yeah, because I mean, for me, in my 30s and 40s, I kind of I had my own person in my head bullying me, saying I wasn't doing enough. I didn't have a real
Mm.
person saying it. I was saying it to myself,
Yeah,
and even now, when I, as you know, I go through periods where I just shut down my social media. I feel there's a bit of me that's sort of going, you come on, you've got to put some stuff out there. I can't imagine like having that actually from another real person, and
yeah,
at that age, it's that's quite frightening.
I think so.
Wow. Um, and just because we're talking about social media, do you think social media as it is going to be in your life for a long time into your adulthood? Do you think about the future in that way? I know most people, young people, might not think about it, but I think you might, and I just wondered what you thought.
I don't know entirely. I know that I definitely, looking back at my opinions of sort of 3 or 4 years ago, I definitely notice sort of the error of the patterns I was thinking in. Because when I first got a phone, I was like, well, I don't want to be sort of a social outcast. I don't want to not be up to date on the latest trends. I don't want to not know what's funny or not know what's in or whatever. Um, but even since just not using my phone in a light phone, like because I was using the light phone, um, I noticed that no, I didn't miss out on much. I'm 3 cycles of trends probably passed while I didn't have a phone because trends move so quick nowadays. Um, but I don't think I missed that much, and my friends, updated me on a few things. And I think I had 99 notifications from my friends sending me TikToks by the time I got back to my phone.
And
Um,
what was that like? Did you go through them all to see what it was?
I tried to, but it was quite a feat. But I noticed looking back, it was the same when I was 12. I thought that what am I gonna do without a phone? How am I gonna survive? I need a phone to fit in.
Hmm.
But I don't think that that would have happened. I know I convinced myself that that's why I needed an iPhone,
Hmm.
and I convinced my parents that. But looking back, I think there's well, because looking back, you always think that you're older than you are, or at least I do. I know I look back to when I was 7, and I thought playing with like Barbies or whatever was it was too young for me. It was too immature. Um, but I think with a phone as well, when I was 12, I thought, well, I'm basically an adult now. I definitely need a phone. Um, which I guess it's a sort of it's a pattern I need to, look at myself now and go, no, I'm not that old. I'm 16. Like
Yeah,
there were
it's
probably things, yeah.
yeah. I think all everyone's different, and all kids are different. We're all different. I was quite similar to you, though. I think yeah, I probably would have at 12 been like, where's my phone as well, and that wanting to be grown up, you know, not really wanting to be doing things that were considered to be childlike or playful. You know, wanted to do serious things. But of course, the phone has serious things and silly things all over it. As
Mm.
we said before, it's more than one thing. And what's interesting is that when for my generation, it was an amazing concept to think phones were devices we used when we were at home or at work to talk to people on, and it was really amazing. So the big deal for us was, oh my God, we can have this in our pocket. We can speak
Mm.
to people. And that whole period in the 90s with the Nokia phones into the early 2000s was just literally, wow, I can just speak to someone whenever I want, and they can speak to me whenever that was enough. That was the miracle.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's absolutely everything is a whole other thing. And of course, I've gone all the way to the other end of it, where I just want a phone with nothing, which is why I use the light phone. But what do you think your journey might be like? Do you think you'll have a more balanced journey? I've had to be extreme. I can't go, I don't want anything. What would you imagine yourself in your 20s? Are you going to be like two iPhones or an iPhone and a light phone at the weekend, or do you think there'll be some other normal way of communicating and being entertained?
I definitely think there's a balance of the two, somewhere between the two, where I think most people, at least of my generation, will eventually fall. Um, because I know things like TikTok. I'm not gonna be using that when I'm 25, 30. I just maybe I say that now and I don't mean it, but I'm like 98% sure
Mm,
um that that's not a part of my life that's gonna stick around. I think I'll probably mature out of it eventually. Um or just sort of stop using it quite as much because I definitely use it a fair amount now. Um but I can see myself just sort of not relying on it for
mm,
connection or whatever. Um, but other things I know, things like Snapchat.
mm,
Uh, I since having the light phone, I think are kind of pointless. I think they're fun for a while, um, but they're not necessary particularly, and they're not adding anything to my life. That outweigh the sort of harmful and addictive qualities that they also do bring. Um, Instagram is something that it's sort of more deep rooted into people's lives than the other ones because it's not just my generation. So I think that one will be harder to not use, but I definitely think as I get older, um, it will become sort of social media, my phone in general will become less, um, take up less space in my life, I think.
Mm. And you'd like it to.
I would hope so, definitely. But I see that happening, I think, with my generation sort of getting older. I think there is a sort of sense that this isn't going to be forever. Um, and those sorts of apps, I feel like, fingers crossed, might be coming to their peak of
Mm.
relevance
Now,
use right now.
I hope you're right. And just imagining if you were a parent now, if you had children, what would your attitude be towards smartphones for, I don't know, if you had a 12-year-old
I
or
think
when you have a 12-year-old in the future, if we're still dealing with this.
um, my parents had a really healthy attitude towards phones. I think, like a lot of other parents, they sort of, I did, and outward sources pressured them into giving me a phone. But until then, I was not allowed to watch a lot of TV. I was not that um, sort of in on technology. And I think take a similar route to what my brother did. He got a phone at 13. Um, but I think the light phone is definitely a good way to start. I think I would do that, or I would give them a Nokia because I think it is probably important for safety and things like that to have some form of connection. But
Mm,
I think it's unnecessary to have Instagram and TikTok on a phone because you can get it on a laptop if it's really, really necessary. If a child has
mm,
sort of excuses like I did to say, oh, well, Instagram has this, TikTok has this, Snapchat has this. You can get it
mm,
on a laptop. And I find that that's a lot less addictive and a lot less harmful than a phone, having it constantly around. I think I, yeah, I would definitely wait to give my child
mm.
a phone, um,
Yeah.
access to those sorts of things.
Well, that's good to hear. And it's good to hear about how your parents sort of, cultivated your early experience of technology as well. It's true. The thing that I think about, and I think it's for all ages, is that when you're going about your day, whether you're traveling on a bus to school or you're traveling to work, we used to have those periods of time where we were just left with our thoughts and feelings as well, if there are things that we're feeling, and we don't do that anymore because as soon as we're having to get from A to B for 25 minutes, we're looking at something, aren't we? And there's no space, and we can't see yet what the harm of that might be. So that's all I'd say as you reintegrate into your smartphone. Keep an eye out for that bit because I think having the space and the boredom, but you do boredom, don't you? You do a lot of
I tried
thinking.
to do board. I
Pardon?
definitely, I definitely was a lot more creative and a lot more sort of innovative when I didn't have my phone. Because even for the simple fact of not holding my phone if I was watching Netflix meant that I could knit. And I've been
Mm.
knitting gloves. I'm knitting all my friends' gloves for Christmas. Um, which is just sort of multitasking. I can do that if I'm on a laptop and
Yeah.
I'm still watching the same things. But just the fact that I'm not using my hands means that I can do other things as well,
Yeah.
even if maybe I'm not bored.
I'm saying,
Um,
not that the light phone make adverts because they don't advertise, but it'd be great. Just like light phone makes you knit.
literally, yeah, it does. And even now, even today, um, I get the train home from school and I look around and everyone's on their phone. But I'm trying to sort of, no, I'm just gonna sit and look out the window or I'm gonna read. Because it's so tempting just to go, oh, I'll go on it for a minute and then I'll not do that. But then you get sucked into it. But I'm
Mm,
definitely more sort of aware. Like I was partially aware before, but I think now it's easier to just let space be space and not need to instantly fill it. I can just like 2 years ago, a year ago. there would be very, very little chance I would sit waiting for the bus or for the train or whatever it is, without going on my phone. That would just be such a normal thing. It was just instinctual. But now those just periods of waiting, I just have a look around. And it's a lot nicer. It's a lot, um, I don't know, it's nice to be in the world and notice the world around me rather than
Mm.
sort of just looking down on my phone. Um, yeah.
No, well, that's a nice way to end it, and we can all imagine you now going off and looking at the world, the extraordinary world that you're in, instead of the one that's coming to the phone all the time. Oh, thank you for doing this. Thank you for trying out the phone, and is there anything you want to say that you haven't said?
Not that I can think of.
No, I think you said it all.
I think I have.
Yeah, you said a lot. It's been brilliant. Well, thank you, Rose Pepper, for joining
Thank
me
you.
on Super Connected Conversations.
Don't you want?
See you
Thank you for having me.
soon. That's where we cut. Well,
La 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 la. Don't you wanna sing la 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 along with me? Well, don't you wanna sing la 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 la? Don't you wanna sing la 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 along